No city encapsulates the ever-changing demands of travelers quite like Las Vegas, Nevada. Beyond the glitz and glamour of the Strip, a half-mile east of downtown is a cluster of abandoned motels essentially frozen in time. They had names like the Starview and the Lucky, one-story themed buildings wrapped around parking lots and swimming pools, their neon signs harkening back to a mid-century Vegas boom. It's been 80 years since the first motels appeared on East Fremont Street, and thanks to a mix of neighborhood economic change and the later rise of some unlikely allies, these here exist almost unchanged since their opening. But that doesn't mean everything is alright. They are not here because they've been preserved, but rather ignored. No longer occupied by the transient residents of the past, but not yet seeing the promise of neighborhood renewal. So what will become of these buildings? Let's look at the past, present, and possible future of the motels of East Fremont Street. Before we start, like and subscribe to help this video reach more people. Alright, now let's get to East Fremont. Following the re-legalization of gambling in 1931, Fremont Street in downtown Vegas once again became the gathering spot of casinos in the city, long before the rise of the modern Strip on Las Vegas Boulevard. A half-mile east of downtown, the motels were born into a magical time in history. World War II is over, America was diving headfirst into prosperity and car culture, and Vegas was booming, increasing in population by over 150% a decade. Hoover Dam had been completed in 1935, providing a then seemingly endless supply of water into the otherwise inhospitable desert. Fremont was at that time one of the most important highways into the city, years before the arrival of the interstate highway system, and motels began cropping up here leading out from downtown. Although the concept of the Motor Court Motel had been around since the 20s, the idea saw a slightly updated mid-century resurgence across the country. The layouts were generally the same, a U-shaped one-story motel with exterior doors centered around a parking lot, with a pool in the middle if you're lucky. But although the layouts were the same, the googie and otherwise themed motifs gave each one a unique and dramatic vibe. Kitschy, sometimes straight-up cheesy architectural details adorn the motels. I'd like to picture a magical moment when all the neon signs were illuminated, reflecting on rows of polished thunderbirds and skylarks, all pointing towards what was then the pinnacle of Las Vegas culture. In what seems to be a recurring theme on my channel, the good times here were not to last. Much like downtown Vegas itself, the rise of the Strip on Las Vegas Boulevard south of here would trigger the decline of East Fremont. As travelers shifted towards the mega resorts of the Strip, what had been the centerpiece of Las Vegas culture and vibrancy slid into decrepitness. By the 1980s, East Fremont was a hotbed for crime and destitution, and downtown wasn't faring much better. Tourists had all but given up on Old Vegas. This trend would continue essentially unchallenged until the 90s, when the Fremont Street Experience opened in downtown, breathing some much-needed life into the city's decaying core. Downtown Vegas and East Fremont Street were further drawn into the public eye in the early 2000s when now-deceased Zappos founder Tony Hsieh began funding a variety of projects in and around downtown. A major advocate for the city, Hsieh relocated Zappos headquarters to the old City Hall building and funded art and development, including the iconic container park completed in 2013. He and his partners purchased, and his partners still own, many of the motels on East Fremont, most notably the renovated Ferguson's. Ferguson's, with its boutiques and restaurants, opened in 2020 shortly before Hsieh's death, and much like Container Park down the street, was intended to be a catalyst for change in the neighborhood. Fremont Street itself was redone by the city around the same time, improving the streetscape and incorporating period-themed lights. Despite the progress, development of the old motels seems to have stalled. The 3-block area between Ferguson's and Container Park is in much better condition with a lot more activity than points further east. So I do think that there is the possibility that the revitalization spreads, but it certainly has not yet become what Hsieh envisioned. The motels today sit in limbo, past the trap house days of the 80s and 90s, but not yet seeing the promised future of the neighborhood. The dry air has preserved them largely as is, with some added boards on the windows and fences keeping out the curious. This cluster of motels is an unbridled opportunity to repurpose a truly American space. The fact that so many mid-century motels in such proximity to each other still exist, let alone in this good of shape, is a miracle in itself. Despite Hsieh's death, I'd like to believe there are still enough advocates here to make something great out of this place. Whether that becomes a reality, only time will tell. Scott here. Thanks for coming with me on my exploration of East Fremont Street. Subscribe to the channel and join me on the next adventure.